Welcome to the Gallery and Hurley Unfiltered podcast, Iowa Football Rewind.
Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast player to get a behind-the-scenes look that you won't find anywhere else.
In this episode, we jump right in with our conversation with former Iowa tight end Scott Slutzker. He also spent some time in the NFL with the Colts and the Saints. Scott had a problem with his mic on his laptop, but hopefully you can still hear clearly, and hopefully you enjoy this conversation.
Baseball and basketball were the two sports that I played probably the most before going to college. My dad was in the Navy. We moved around a lot when I was young. And I was born in California. Actually, I was born near where you live, Nick. I was born in Oakland, California. My dad was in the Navy. He was in Vietnam actually when I was born. And it's a transient life for military families, and my dad was 15 years in, and so we'd moved around quite a bit. We finally, my parents are both from upstate New York, and so we finally settled, for the most part, in Long Island. And I remember just being there through third grade, I think it was. And then my dad got a job in New Jersey, and that's when we moved to New Jersey. So I lived in the same town in New Jersey, Hasbrook Heights, New Jersey, from fourth grade through high school, which was a great place to grow up. It was, metropolitan. It was very close to New York City. I think it was 8-9 miles from New York City. But it was a nice little town.
Was it just north of the Meadowlands?
Yeah, it's right next to the Meadowlands.
Yeah.
Yep,
okay.
Exactly. Yeah. You've likely driven through it. You probably have never stopped there, but unless you went to the Ben Biggs Diner, that's one of the things it was known for. Had that cool diner like right on the highway. So I played some soccer when I was younger in Long Island. Actually, Long Island, at least when I knew it, it wasn't a huge football area. It was bigger lacrosse and soccer. And soccer is easy for little kids, right? So I played a lot of soccer, and I was tall and skinny, and I could run. And it was great. And we moved to this town Hasbrook Heights. And my dad played football. He actually played 2 years at Brockport, SUNY Brockport, as well. He was a very good athlete in high school, and he played. He was a good baseball, basketball, and football player as well. Although not as tall as I've become, he was a very good athlete. And my mom was too. My mom played volleyball and softball, and for a woman, my mom's tall. You guys obviously have met her before and recall her. She was 5'10". She's still alive, but she's not 5'10" anymore. Going to this town, I went to go play soccer as I had been doing. And I did well. I I enjoyed it. I was good. I made kind of those all-star teams, et cetera, but the town was so crazy about football that if you didn't play football, you were like an outcast. It was kind of crazy. Even if you were a great soccer player, nobody cared. Not that it matters that anybody cares, but when you're a kid, I think that maybe that matters a little bit more to you than now. So I played soccer for 2 years, fourth and fifth grade there, and then I decided in sixth grade that I wanted to try football. I don't know how it was where you guys grew up with the football season, but for us, our school year always started right after Labor Day. But the football practices, started before that. Usually, your first game is, the first weekend after you come back from school and to school. And so they had what they called captain's practices, right? Captain's practices, and it was basically just, conditioning, quote unquote. But it was like conditioning that kids are doing with each other, right? And they lots of yelling and lots of kind of belittling people and a lot of punitive running and et cetera, et cetera. And it was just a weird scenario to me. And it's just not, I don't know, not to say anything bad about soccer, but you're not really yelling at kids much playing soccer. It's more of a, let's go have fun and run around kind of thing. Obviously, it's very competitive, but it's not that physical game that where and you guys remember back in the day. I mean, a lot of our coaches just felt like that's how they had to get through to kids, right? It's just by screaming at them, and I hated it. I mean, I was like so. It was so foreign to me, like, being yelled at and screamed at and all this stuff. And I went to my parents, and this is before the season began. It was before we even got into actually like football practices. It was just the conditioning part, right? The bear crawls and the push-ups and all that stuff and the sprints. And it wasn't even all that stuff. It was the yelling and the screaming and like all the machismo stuff that was just, really just was foreign to me. So I went to my parents in tears, and I was like, I don't want to play. I don't want to be part of this. It's really funny. And so, my parents were against me quitting because, they trying to instill that, you say you're going to do something, you stick it through. But they did allow me to quit because the season hadn't yet begun. They hadn't yet been relying on me and, whatnot. So, but they did also express to me that this will be the last time that you'll be allowed to quit. And I was okay with it. I went back to play soccer for another 2 years, 6th and 7th grade. And then something changed in me. I don't know what it was. Maybe my balls dropped, maybe I just was ready to, beat on other people. And I went to my parents. I said, I want to play football. This is between 7th and 8th grade. And they said no. I was like, what? What do you mean no? And they're like, no, it's not for you. You've already expressed that, I'm like, well, I changed my mind. And anyway, so another week or two went by. I went back to them, and I was like insistent that I wanted to play. And they said, all right, well, if you decide to do this, then you're going to do it. You're going to play through the whole season. You're not going to quit. And that's that. And I said, fine. So that was for the 8th grade season. And I loved it from day one. And I became the captain of the team. We won our state championship. And then we went to Florida and beat the Florida state champions. And that was the last time 7th grade was the last time I ever played soccer, other than pickup soccer, which I started to play after I got done with the NFL. That's my story. At least, that in my early years. And through those times I started to play baseball in Little League, and then played through high school. I had several professional tryouts out of high school. I played in Yankee Stadium or tried out in Yankee Stadium, Shea Stadium, Cubs, Royals, Twins, a bunch of pro tryouts out of high school, which was a pretty cool experience. My dad says that I should have played baseball. I think he says that mostly because of the injury, the lower injury rate and the money that they have. But he says he thinks I was a better baseball player than football. But I think I made the right choice. Hard to look back and say that it was a bad choice, right?
Yeah, for sure. You had quite an experience. Can you tell us a little more about the baseball tryouts? That would be really interesting to me to hear, like, what that was like, just, how that process worked and, all that.
For me, honestly, it's a little fuzzy for me because, when you're a 16, 17-year-old kid, most of that stuff goes through your parents, right? And so, I got I got letters and whatnot. I during this time I was starting to get letters for football as well. So some of it was sort of a blur. Actually found the box just recently, cleaning out our basement. Found a box of all the letters from football teams and stuff. It was kind of crazy. It was I guess I forgot. I didn't realize how many schools were after me. And I'll say this: I think that things are so much different today than they were when we were younger. These days, they've got high schools where these kids, this is all they do, right? These IMG academy schools and whatnot. It's just nuts. I would have loved that, I'm sure, when I was younger, but to me, it just is. It's odd. So that process, it was. I think the Yankees and Mets thing. The Yankees was my dad grew up a Yankee fan. I grew up a Yankee fan. So that was an amazing experience. I actually had the unfortunate thing that happened with the Yankees was I played in the Babe Ruth system, and they had I think Babe Ruth ends at 16. I was playing in high school as well, but the Babe Ruth happens over the summer, and I played on a regional team that we'd travel around the country playing other teams, and I think that's where I kind of got the exposure, because my high school was small, and while I was knocking the cover off the ball, it's a small school. You're not going to get a ton of exposure, and if you know that part of New Jersey, I mean, it's like small town after small town after small town. You don't even know you're driving through. You could drive for 15 minutes and drive through 4 or 5 towns. I think the exposure that I got was due to this regional Babe Ruth team that I played for, and I think that the Yankees and Mets, I get to play in both Shea and Yankee Stadium. I think that is due to the fact that we lived relatively close to them. The unfortunate thing, we had been playing in a game. I played first base. I'm a lefty, as you guys may or may not remember, but we were playing in a tournament, and I ended up there was an errant throw that was up the line, up the first base line, and I went to stretch for the ball, and the guy collided with me, and I had a pretty major thigh contusion. And this was literally like a day before I was supposed to go to Yankee Stadium to try out. So I did. I went and tried out, and I just couldn't run very well because of my thigh. I played first and hit, but I was hobbled with the thigh. So that was what I recall of that. I do remember hitting now this is the first time I'd ever hit with a wooden bat. Was in this Yankees tryout, and I remember I hit a ball one hop to the right center field fence, which was pretty cool, off of a pitcher that was trying out as well. So that was pretty cool. I get to say that I hit a double off the center field wall, off the right center field wall. Pretty cool experience. Yeah. But all of those were really cool experiences. It's like you don't really know how to act, right? When you go there, you kind of, everybody's sort of like, you're looking at the other guys, they're looking at you. You're almost kind of sizing each other up for whatever reason, even though you're probably not even really competing against them. But the game is the game, and once you get to playing the game, then it's very easy to fall into the regular roles that we know, and being supportive of each other and encouraging each other to do well. But it's almost like you kind of, everybody's walking around with their chest puffed out, trying to look bigger or stronger than they actually are, whatever it may be. But sort of human nature, I think, when you get to that level of competition.
Those draft high school kids, I was like, how do they know who to draft?
I don't think many people realize it's very much like it would be going to the NFL Combine, right? They invite people. It's an invitation only, and you go and you do. They run you. You know, they time you. It is interesting. They time you in the 60 in baseball. They time you, and they take measurements. They do some sort of due diligence there, and then take you through drills and all that stuff, and then usually you do some sort of a scrimmage. That's that's sort of the process. And yeah, that's what I went through with all the different tryouts. It was a cool experience, but I kind of had already made up my mind. I was going to college, and I honestly when I visited Iowa, I actually visited with the baseball coach as well. My intention was to play both baseball and football, and he was very receptive to that as well. So it didn't end up happening that way, mostly because I was living 1,000 miles away from home, and I didn't go to class, so my grades sucked. And I ended up. Well, you guys both remember Frank Verducci, that he recruited me. He was the recruiting coordinator at the time when I was there. He wasn't at the time coaching offensive line, which you guys probably remember him as too. But he recruited me, and he's from New Jersey. His family is actually his family's got a big name in New Jersey high school sports. His dad and I think one or two of his brothers were all football coaches. You guys obviously remember we had a huge contingency from New York and New Jersey, and Frank was a big part of that. So was Bernie Wyatt. You guys probably don't remember Bernie at Iowa. I didn't know him at Iowa because he had just left just that season. That year that I was being recruited, he had just left and gone to Wisconsin, and I knew him as the Wisconsin recruiting coordinator. But everybody else back in Iowa knew him as the recruiting coordinator for Iowa.
He played at Iowa too. Yeah, so
yeah,
that was a big loss when you went to Wisconsin, but that's part of the reason Wisconsin.
It was absolutely. Well, and Alvarez went too, right? So. He became the head coach and took Bernie with him. Verducci got wind of my grades, and he basically just said, what the hell are you doing? He pulled me into his office, and he's like, you're about to get shipped home, man. He's like, what are you doing? And, he was right. I was messing up. I wasn't going to class. I was, going out and not wanting to go to class in the morning. This is in the off season, but it's, you guys remember. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to balance the schoolwork and especially in season. It's a lot, and you have very little free time and whatnot. So they obviously do a good job helping with tutors and whatnot, and having study table. For us, it was involuntary, but it was smart on their part to do that. It was the off season really that hurt me more, because now I had some free time. I could go be a college kid, instead of having to, just go. I mean, let's talk about it. It's great being a football player and getting the attention, and people know who you are, but it's very time intensive. So anyway, in the off season, I was trying to be more like a regular college kid than a scholarship, football player in the off season, and it showed on my grades. And so, and I was a good student in high school, so he knew I was capable of doing the work. I wasn't going to class, flat out. And so my GPA reflected that. And so he pulled me aside and he's like, you better get your head out of your ass, because you're going to be really embarrassed when you got to drive back home with your tail between your legs. And he was right. And that was like my first year, and I dug myself a hole. I was on academic probation, and I was scared, really got nervous. But Frank was great for me. He helped me. He was kind of maybe an uncle figure, if you will, for me. And we just put a plan together and executed on it. It was, the good part was, I wasn't kicked out yet. And so I started taking summer school classes and actually doing, what we were really there to do, which was go to school, hold myself out of the hole. And then in my sophomore year, I started to get a little bit more, I had a pretty good season my sophomore year, and I was starting to get some people started to see my size and my speed and whatnot, and started to realize that maybe this kid is going to have a chance in the next level. But I redshirted. I don't recall if either of you did. You probably both did. I think most of us did back then.
Nick didn't. I did. Nick played right away.
Well, yeah, because he had a cannon for a leg.
I had my college experience after college. I think was probably
yeah.
I had to postpone that a little bit, which probably wasn't good either. But
yeah, what year did you? Were you 90? Were you 92, Nick?
93.
93. Okay.
I came in 92.
I couldn't remember if it was 92.
Yeah, and then we both
right.
played starting 93.
I started to get some positive attention, for football. That focused me even more on everything that was important, right? Which is grades, school, doing the right thing, eliminating distractions, et cetera, et cetera. And I think from about really the second half of my sophomore year, the football season had just ended, and I had gotten a fair amount of positive, input from scouts, not to me personally, but to some people within the program, that just really focused me, to the point where I wasn't going out anywhere near as much, and that really toward my senior year, I was barely going out at all. I'd moved off campus. I had a single apartment by myself, away from anything of real significance. And that's actually when I started dating my now wife, of 5 years. And so it really had a positive effect on kind of my whole life after that.
How many years did you say? It cut out there for a second. How long have you been
25 years. Yeah, we've been married for 25 years. We've been together for 30. Yeah. We started dating, 94. Still married and 2 kids, and here we are.
who else was looking at you at the time, recruiting wise? You go on any other visits, and also your transition, coming from kind of a suburb of New York City, basically, to the middle of a cornfield. How that transition, or how they talk to you into coming to there.
Yeah. Like I said before, it seems like all these kids today, I mean, if you score 15 points in a basketball game, you suddenly, you're the next superstar, and you're going to the NBA. Every kid thinks that these days. That was not the way we thought back in the day. I don't know if it's just maybe, or if maybe there were people that were like, I'm the best thing to ever happen to this game. and I'm going to go wherever I want. But I was like, when I started getting recruited to play football, it was like surreal. This is actually a funny story. The very first letter I ever got to play, asking about, you guys all got them, right? An interest letter from a college. It was amazing. It was like the coolest thing to get a letter sent to my house, to me, that I said that the school wanted me to, consider playing football there. That school was Columbia. You guys know Columbia, right? It's Ivy League. It's one of the best education institutions you can have. So that was amazing. The funny part about that is, you guys know, obviously, they play in the Ivy League, which is not the same caliber as what we played. But these are also really freaking smart kids too. So, you get it. But living where we lived, and Columbia's in New York City, my dad gets the paper every Sunday. And then I see the headline. Columbia had the longest losing streak in football. They had, at the time, 0-47. They went 4+ seasons without a win. And I saw that, and I was like, oh my God. I mean, this is still amazing to get this letter, but it's from, a school that's terrible at football. It was, like I said, it was a yay and a boo at the same time. I got a letter, but it was from the worst team in college football.
So my cousin, Matt Less, went to Columbia, and he was, I think if I remember correctly, he caught the game-winning touchdown to break that streak.
Oh my
So
God.
he definitely
That's
knew
crazy.
about Columbia, definitely knew about the streak. Like he had picture in the New York Times, that kind of scenario. So that was kind of a
What are
crazy
the chances?
Yeah, crazy coincidence, right?
That is really crazy. Yeah. Like I said, I wasn't this big ego kid that thought that I was the best thing since sliced bread. I was just excited to be, kind of part of this process. I had decent grades. So I did get I got letters from a lot of the Ivy League schools. I came from a lower middle class family. My dad was in the Navy for a long time. They don't make much money. We did, I have an older sister who's 2 years older than me. By the way, she was also a fantastic athlete. She was a all-world sprinter. She won the meet of champions in the state of New Jersey her senior year. With this 5'3" white girl beating, think about New Jersey and the number of people, and she beat them all. She was a dynamo. I wasn't even sure that I was going to go to college, at one point, just because of the money situation. And it's not something that I thought about all the time, but, you realize that your parents don't have a lot of money. How are they going to send me to school, right? And so I wasn't even sure. I hadn't really thought it through that much, just because, you're in high school. You're not really thinking about that. So you really have to. But started to get this attention from schools, and I'm thinking, okay, well, yeah, it'd be great to play football, but it's not like I'm going to go play professional football. So yeah, I'm just going to get an education, and you start thinking about, well, all right, if Columbia is looking at me, and Princeton and whatever, and Duke and some of these other schools, these are like these fantastic, schools that you set yourself up for, a really positive future. If, you think about their alumni associations, you think about, kind of your opportunity to get a job down the road, once you figure out what you want to do, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the type of stuff that I started to think about, and like I said, I feel like, and maybe I was just a little more humble than some of the other people, but I felt like people weren't really thinking that much about, like, when you're a junior or a senior in high school, you're not thinking to yourself, I'm going to the NFL. At least I didn't think that. Did either of you?
I was kind of one of those last kids that was picked from Iowa. I was a token Iowa kid. So yeah, I didn't have any dreams of going and doing even what I did. So yeah, not at all.
And I walked on, so like, yeah, I was just like, can I make it the team, basically, so not worried about the next level.
I didn't even realize that. I don't even remember that, Brian. That's kind of crazy. That's awesome. What a great story that is, too. I mean, yeah. So you guys are in the same boat as me. You're like, you're not thinking that you're God's gift to the game, right? And so you start thinking more pragmatically. You start realizing after high school, like, all right, well, in 4 years, I'm going to be working. And maybe maybe next year, this year, I'm going to be working if I don't go to college. And so I started looking at it that way. And so I wanted, I knew I didn't want to, I got letters from all up and down the, UCLA, USC, all the West Coast schools and stuff. I just didn't want to be that far away from my family. I was looking for, when I started to have some options, I started to develop a plan that I wanted to be, close enough that I could get home either with a not a 5-6 hour airplane ride, but or either be able to fly home or drive home without being too difficult. And most of my family at that point was all based on the East Coast. So I started looking at, really nothing past the Midwest. And so the visits that I ended up taking, there are a couple that I regret. Well, there's one that I really regret, and that was Rutgers. Now, that was a New Jersey state school, and I took that visit because my dad asked me to. Because it was the New Jersey State School, and he wanted to have the ability to, see my games all the time. You guys may remember, or may not, but they ended up seeing all my games anyway because they ended up driving to Iowa every weekend. Actually, the away games, with exception of bowl games, were closer than our home games. I wanted to be close enough that I could still, my family is important to me. And I wanted a mix of conferences, a mix of like kind of school types and stuff. And I didn't necessarily choose, I guess I did choose a mix of conferences. It was more heavily weighted Big Ten and ACC, I guess. But I visited Duke because they're Duke, right? Because their academics are ridiculous, and you graduate with a degree from Duke, and you pretty much name your price. I visited at the time. Maryland was looking very good. They had a pretty good stretch, run of successful seasons. They had a couple well-known coaches there that had done fairly well for a bit. So I visited there. Iowa was my first visit, actually. We had 5 visits. I took all 5. Iowa was my first. I don't remember the order after that, except for I know the last visit I took was Notre Dame, and that's the one that everybody kind of perks their ears up about, because they just won the national championship. Lou Holtz was there, and so I visited Iowa, Duke, Rutgers, Maryland, and Notre Dame. Notre Dame came on the scene kind of late, and I actually canceled the visit to go to Wisconsin. So I figured, everybody was kind of saying Wisconsin because Alvarez and Wyatt left, went there. It was basically like Iowa North. So even though we know Wisconsin's known to have a great campus, it was probably going to be very similar to Iowa. Not campus-wise, but just the opportunity, the program. So I ended up canceling a visit to go to Notre Dame. It's one of those things, I kind of regret it, to be honest. Not because who knows what might have happened if probably gone to, visit Wisconsin, but I don't know, I felt as though I was kind of betraying Bernie Wyatt a little bit, because he had been hot on my trail from the beginning. Verducci was actually the first to get in touch with me, from those schools, but Bernie was a good guy. You guys probably got recruited by him and know who he is. Really good guy. So anyway, I canceled the visit to Wisconsin to go to Notre Dame, and when I did, it was a dud of a visit. And everybody that I talk, people ask me all the time, why wouldn't you go to Notre Dame? National championship. I'm like, I didn't care about that. I don't. I mean, I cared about it. I think that was. I'm sure that would be a great experience. But that can't be the only reason why you want to go to the school. Now, I know Notre Dame as a school is a good school. Academically, it's very well regarded. But they have like 9,000 students on campus, right? It's a lot smaller than all these other schools for the most part that I was looking at. I mean, Rutgers is like 60,000, and I liked the idea of going to a big school. I know Duke's a little bit smaller, but they're not as small as Notre Dame. The other thing about Notre Dame, there's nothing to do in South Bend. It's, pardon my language, it's a shithole. South Bend is right on the edge of Gary, Indiana. It's like the murder capital of the Midwest, and South Chicago, right? So you're like in this little area, and there was like one or two bars on campus. And when I visited, my host, they just wanted to hang out in their dorm room and play video games. And I'm like, guys, what do you guys do for fun? And what do you, and they're like, win national championships, like, come on, man. Yeah, how's that worked out for them since? But like, there was more to it for me than just playing football and maybe winning football games. I wanted the college experience, and sitting in the dorm playing video games wasn't that. And not to say that I didn't do that some at Iowa, but not certainly. I certainly wouldn't have done that in a recruiting visit. And then as I got to know, not that I got to know him in a weekend, but Lou Holtz was a very interesting character. And I was really unsure that I could play for him, to be honest. I didn't love his attitude and his style. You and I, we all know this, but if you want to see a big ego, you meet the head coach. I mean, all of them have them, right? And for a good reason, especially when they're in these big programs. It's the ones that know how to hide it or control it are the ones that I think everybody really respects. Lou Holtz did not hold back. He was all pomp and circumstance, and I was not there for it. It wasn't for me. Not to mention, a very small piece. Notre Dame is a Catholic school, and I'm Jewish. I'm not. I
was going to ask that question too.
Yeah. You guys know that about me, but and it's not. I'm not wearing the yarmulke and not going to practice on the high holy days. But Skip Holtz is Lou Holtz's son. He recruited me. He was the tight end coach at the time, driving us around campus. They must have pointed out their grotto like 5 times. And that's the grotto. That's where people go to pray and this and that. And I'm like, okay, great. I saw it once and that was enough. It wasn't, it didn't bother me that it was there, but they continued to accentuate it even though they knew I was Jewish. And like I said, I'm not this strict practicing Jew, but it was a little funny to me, a little bit odd. anyway, when I finally made my decision, and this wraps this into a bow here, it was still, even with all that stuff, it was between Notre Dame and Iowa. It would be hard not to, really strongly consider Notre Dame because of their history, right? And yeah, playing for a national championship would be amazing. And they're on TV. I mean, the Notre Dame Broadcasting Network, or Notre Dame Broadcasting Company every weekend, right? So I mean, you knew you were going to be front and center on the, on the big stage. But I chose Iowa, and when Skip Holtz called to ask what my decision was, I told him, and he didn't even. The only words he said to me were, "Put your mother on the phone." And I did, and he went up one side and down the other of her, and this is a terrible mistake. He's not going to play. He's not going to, they don't play real football there. It's a waste of his talent, et cetera, et cetera. And my mom got off the phone. I'm listening to her and her replies to him, and I'm realizing that he's really kind of berating the choice that I made. And we got off the phone, and it was confirmation that we made the right call. Everybody else was gracious about the decision. All the other schools that I talked to, that I'd visited, were all gracious, except for them. And I think it was like I said, it was confirmation. Mom and Dad and I have talked about it for years. Just confirmation that I made the right call. And then the rest is history. I mean, going to Iowa was, the best choice, clearly the best choice. And it was such a family oriented team, and program. I mean, that was really what I think really sucked me in. Obviously play Big Ten football. It's a great school. I think it's a great mix of, all the different things. You play good Big Ten football. It's a great, Iowa City's got just a great atmosphere. The fans are fantastic, but the school is also great. And it was everything that I wanted it to be. It could have been a little bit warmer there, but other than that, it was pretty fantastic.
Embarrassingly, you might have been my first foray into Judaism. I think I wished you a Merry Christmas once, and you're like, "I'm Jewish," and I'm like, "Merry Christmas." I'm like, "What do you mean?" So like we came from a very Catholic area. So my wife now is Jewish, and my extended family are. So I'm getting to learn all the nuance of that, which it's funny to think back to that part. I was like, why is Scott mad at me? Because I wished him a Merry Christmas.
It's funny. I think, you hope that with age, comes wisdom. And I think this is one of those scenarios where I could have handled that situation. That, and you weren't the only one that I did that to. I think, that I was mad at or whatever. Like I said, I think with age, hopefully comes wisdom. But for me back then, I guess I was kind of tired. I felt like Christmas and Christianity was sort of being thrown in my face at some point, and not that it was, and for you to say Merry Christmas, you were just wishing me well, honestly. And I should have just said thank you and, Merry Christmas to you. But there was a time in my life where I was like, well, I'm Jewish. Why would you say Merry Christmas? Right. There was a time maybe I might have said it to you, but if someone told me Merry Christmas, I would say Happy Hanukkah. And they'd look at me like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean? Happy Hanukkah. And they're like, well, I'm not Jewish. And I'm like, well, I'm not Christian. And I think everybody assumes that everybody is. And it's just a nice thing to say. And you're really just saying it because you're wishing me well. And I should have taken it that way. And I didn't. So
no, I think it was a good, it was a good thing for me because it made me realize that there's a lot of experience that I didn't have growing up where I did, right? It was really kind of insular and those things. And I think that was a great experience at Iowa of there's people from all different walks of life, all different, you know, religious backgrounds. And that just,
True.
it was an eye-opening thing for me to be like, oh, well, oh, wow. Like this is a whole nother thing that I don't even have purview into. So yeah, not at all
Yeah.
that way. So I think it was good for me to get that, like, oh, I need to
Well,
be more curious about who and what people are kind of.
fair enough. But I could have handled that much better than I did as well. So I'm sorry if I made you feel bad about it.
All good, sir. All good. Like going more into Iowa, like you came in, who was your position coach? Was that Carl Hargrave?
When I got there, it was Dave Triplett.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he became your special teams coordinator, didn't he?
He was.
He was for a couple
beginning.
of years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, so he was the tight end coach when I got there. Yep. He was the, you know, he and Frank Verducci were the guys that recruited me. I love Dave. He was a nice guy. I mean, he was, I don't know that he had played football. He might have when he was younger, but he was a good guy.
He played at Iowa, actually. He was a receiver at Iowa.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't really
Maybe
realize
I
that
didn't
at the
one
time
point.
either. Kind of kept it low key, but he was.
Yeah. Yeah, he kept it low key, and you looked at him too. You look like he's a businessman, you know.
He did kind of, didn't he? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, but he was great. His family was great. His wife, their kids, you know, they were a big part of. That was one of the things I really enjoyed, was getting to know, you know, not just him, but getting to know Hendrickson's kids, and you know, that was a fun part, you know, of it all. And now I see some of, like, Dave Triplett's. I see, you know, his daughter, and she's gorgeous, and she's you know, she's doing well, and it's kind of funny because when you think about it, we're not that much different in age. You know, they were probably teenagers, or maybe, you know, I think Hendrickson's kids were a little bit younger, but you know, we were all teenagers ourselves, and then, you know, in our early 20s maybe. But
Well,
yeah,
Myers
I see.
Hendrickson was the head football coach at Western Illinois for a couple of years.
Oh, was he?
When
That's
that
awesome.
happened, I'm like, that can't be possible, because he was just this little kid.
Yeah, he was a little
he can't
kid.
be a head football
Yeah.
coach now, and yep, sure enough, he's old enough.
Well,
So that's crazy,
right? And that's what I'm kind of getting. I mean, like, so, you know, I'll be 52 at the end of the year. You guys are, you know, in your late 40s.
50.
Maybe you're 50. Yeah. Let's just say we were 19, 20 years old. They're still in their, you know, in their late 30s right now, or maybe they're in their 40s. I mean, it's really kind of funny. There's a big gap when you're young. You know, that gap is really big when you're young. When you get older, that gap gets so much smaller.
For sure.
Yeah, but yeah. So Triplett was my first coach, and Matt Whitaker was my host, and Whit was there.
He was there at least
season.
the year I
Him
was
and-
there, 92, 93. Was he there?
He was 46, so no, he was not. So,
Yeah,
he
so it was 92. So he and Al Cross were the two tight ends that were kind of the guys. You know, Al was the receiver, and Matt was the blocker for the most part. So it was good getting to know those guys in the tight end room. And I'm trying to think what year Carl Hargrave came in as our tight end coach. It was either 92 or 93. And I loved Carl. I still do. I mean, he was a huge part in my development. He played a huge part in my development. You know, you guys probably know this, but he played in the NFL. He was a defensive back. So it was very interesting being taught from the perspective of a D-back, because, you know, and he was a safety, so he sometimes had to cover tight ends and whatnot. He was, you know, so he might not have known all the minutia of, you know, blocking technique and et cetera, but all the other pieces of the game, yeah, he was great at helping you, with the mental toughness and the physical toughness and the attitude to, not be denied, whatever it was that you wanted to do. We had it was Greg Allen and Mark Russell, myself, Derek Price, which I know you guys talked to last week or the week before. We had a really good tight end room. It was fun. And obviously before that it was Al Cross and Whit were there as well. And then years after, it was Chris Knipperberger, then Zeron Flemister and Austin Wheatley, a couple more studs that we just kept reloading. It was pretty cool. Just before I got there, so he was still hanging around in Iowa City, was Mike Pitley. I don't know if you knew him, or you probably did because you guys were fans of Iowa football when you were in high school. But he was a New York or New Jersey. He was, a metropolitan New York, New Jersey area guy, and he had great hands as well. He was a good tight end for us, for Iowa, and he had really good, his ball catching skills were great. And I got to know him a little bit when I came to campus early, my freshman year. And I got to know Titley a little bit there too as well. So really good guy. And then I had seen him, in years past after that. That was with Carl Hargrave was, I guess 92, 93. Was he there 94 also? Maybe. And then Hendrickson came in that one year, 95, my senior year.
Henderson came in,
or was it?
I want to say 95, maybe senior year or junior. Yeah, I can't remember, 94 or 95, somewhere around there.
That was an interesting scenario there. I mean, I was sad to see Hargrave go, but he wanted to go back to the NFL. He had been coaching in the NFL under Denny Green in Minnesota for years, and I think he wanted to go back into the NFL game. Nobody faulted him. We were sad to see him go. I was sad to see him go because I love the guy. Yeah, then Hendrickson came in, and I don't know if he ever played football. I don't even remember. I was pretty far advanced in my college career at that point. I kind of knew what I was doing. But he was a good coach. Yeah, nothing bad to say about him. He was a nice guy. And I think he had been a head coach at a smaller school before that, actually. This was sort of an opportunity for him to step up into a kind of a higher caliber of
what it was?
Football.
He was assistant in 92 and then left for Southeast Missouri State. And then it says he came back in 94 to be assistant coach at Iowa. So he left for a year. Southeast Missouri State.
Who was that?
Coordinator. Hendrickson.
Oh, Hendrickson?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then he came back in what, 94, I guess?
94, it looks like. Yep. And he says this, he played it in at UNI.
It's funny because he's another one. He looks like he'd be a businessman. He's got the glasses and he's got the haircut and he's kind of got a smaller build, and you're like, okay, yes. What's this guy doing on the football field? If you don't know their background, I guess I forgot. I think so many of those things, you forget a lot of those things. A lot of things kind of become a little blurry because things are moving so quickly and milestones and things are happening so fast that you might just get a blur of it as it goes by, and in one ear out the other kind of thing. It is something that I've thought about in my years, now after out of the game and out of the spotlight. I don't have any regrets. I hope that I'm not on anybody's list, like the shit list. I hope I've crossed my name off of those lists, because you just even though you're not intentionally trying to be mean to anybody, it's possible that it happened along the way, or that you've forgotten somebody that you probably shouldn't have. And I do think about that stuff as I get older, just like, I hope there's nobody out there that has any ill will towards me because I, was arrogant around them or something like that. But some of these things, they're like I said, they're such a blur, particularly, when you start getting attention. It's kind of like high school when you start getting all this attention from schools and coaches and whatnot, and you're still playing. You're still going to high school. You're still playing. I played. Went from one season to school year starts with football season, right? I mean, like the day after football season is done, you're in the gym starting basketball practice or wrestling practice or track practice, winter track or something. But I was a football, basketball, baseball guy. And the day basketball ended, the next day I was in the gym starting baseball, right? And so all these other things that are happening around you, it's very easy to forget some of that stuff or forget some of those people. I hope that there's nobody out there that's just that I've wronged.
It's funny you said when you're bringing back old memories in that when you were talking about your parents. I think that was a part that I think when I look back on that, they were part of our little group as well, right? It's like your parents were there every weekend, my parents were there,
Yeah.
like Matt Hughes's dad, like
Yes.
Hurley, your parents, and so that was a lot of the memories I had of just being like, getting to know, your folks and like being part of your kind of extended family, and that was a great part for me. And I think my mom and dad really, if you ask them, that was a part they really enjoyed as well. It's like, oh, they would see people on the road that they were going to the games, and just interact like within the years, and I think that was a big and fun spot for them to be in.
Yeah, it's so true. I think you hit it on the the nail on the head. I mean, we were a team, you and me and Brian and all our teammates, but our families were also, woven into the fabric of what this experience was. And I treasure it. I mean, I think about, I still look at that picture from when we went to your house. Remember we did it a couple of times to your house, Nick, but the one where we were all posing around that tractor. And
I'll put it up here
awesome.
on the video. I'll put it on the video.
It's good. Thank you. It's awesome. I mean, I've looked through it several times. I have to say my personal favorite is Aaron Granquist. You remember with a look on his face, obviously he's playing the fool there, but that's also par for the course for Aaron, right? Just being a jokester. I think hearing some, not to go to the bad side of this, but hearing some of the things that were happening in the last several years at Iowa with this racial stuff, was shocking to me to think that stuff was going on, because we, at least, I mean, this is my feeling. I'm not going to speak for you guys. You guys can speak up. But I loved all my teammates. I mean, it's not to say that I got along with all of them, but I never saw black or white. I never saw any of that stuff. And I'm as close with, our black teammates that were there as I am with, any of the white guys. I mean, that there was just never, I don't ever recall us having any issues, black on white issues, or any racial issues or questions. Now, maybe I just have forgotten that stuff, but I know myself, I never did. Now, part of it for me is I grew up in the metropolitan area of New York, and northern New Jersey. So it's a hodgepodge of people there. You've got to know how to get along with everybody. But I don't ever recall those being issues. So when I heard the stuff going on, and there's question about what was actually going on there, but it really hurt me to hear that, because that's not the way I saw or see our time at Iowa.
When those things came out, I had to do a check, and I was like, we were all really close, and there was a probably, now maybe like not an inappropriateness, but there was just like a free flowing, like, jokes and that thing where we just didn't have those issues. And I was like, wow, did I just have a huge blind spot to that? And so I asked a couple of guys, our old teammates, I was like, listen, did you feel this way, or were we, was things inappropriate? And he was like, no, everything was great. It was not an issue, I think. So I think it was a different time and a different like capital of the world of being like, things were just different in that bubble, I think, to be honest, at least for us.
Yeah. You feel that way too, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, it was really shocking as well. I felt like, okay, that should be the one place that is the best, as a sports team. You got everyone working on common goals, you understand, and you can see the work that everyone puts into it. It's like, it's the best place or the least place to have that kind of tension and conflict. And so that was really disappointing. And as someone who grew up in Iowa City, I took it really bad too. It's like, is this a reflection of, has this been going on and I'm blind to it all this time? And this is happening in my hometown, reflected in the school, or is it a one-off, incident, or just too much structure and the way they handled it? So I think, hopefully that, and maybe we'll find out as we interview other players that they had a different experience we didn't know about. But I felt like, yeah, our perspective as white men is, it seemed like everyone got along pretty well, and that there was a good camaraderie there. And yeah, you didn't always get along with everybody as best friends, but we all respected each other, I think, and said, hey, we know what we're all going through, and we have that common bond of morning workouts and winter bubble early in the morning and running the stairs. Like you are teammates, and you have that respect for everybody. So yeah, it was shocking, and hopefully that's been addressed and it's much better now. But
I think the conversation that kind of came up around some of that, there was a couple different pieces to it. We had, like, our support staff, I think, was really that extended family as well, right? You had like Barb and Deb, who are tutors, and like, these guys that are miles away from home. Scott, like you were, I'm sure, like homesick, and
Streef.
So yeah, Streef, and you kind of had that built-in family that's like, oh, okay, these people, I can get yelled at by my coach this week, and he's on me, and things are down on that side, but then there's other people that are like, oh, hey, can build you up and do those pieces. I think there was also, at least for me back then, we got the personality kind of ground out of us to a certain degree, right? There was like, Brian was a quiet, kind of more shy type guy. Chris Knipper is like more of a loose cannon. Derek Price is more of a loose cannon. And it was kind of almost a military thing of like, everyone's got to fall in line, cut your hair, like none of these like personality and individual things stood out. So it was like, maybe it was a confluence of like those pieces being like, they're trying to motivate, they're trying to, do a military sort of kind of thing that's not really working anymore, right? Or Scott, like people said, when you showed up to practice, they'd yelled at you and did all that. So it was kind of getting more of like, oh, these kids are kids, and each of them are individual personalities, and like some of maybe those things didn't quite come through as much. And like, I remember Coach Fry asking me like if I knew how to buy a bus ticket home, and I was like, well, are you saying like, is that, I'm a poor farm kid, so like, should I take offense to that? Should I, what I mean? Like it's kind of like a motivation thing. And so I think there's a really convoluted and complex conversation in that regard.
Yeah, for sure. And I like you said, I hope that that those issues are now been taken care of. But yeah, I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, so there's no teammates here. This is one of the challenges of not living close to where you went to college, right? Is that you don't get to go back as often, and having kids and the kids playing, my kids, and they're playing sports and things that they're doing in the fall that we want to be a part of. It's hard to get back. But I look, I look all up and down my Facebook friends, and it's all the buddies from back in the day. And a lot of those guys get together. I see Todd Romano once in a while. I see Bobby Diaco once in a while. I see Derek Price once in a while. I stay in touch with a lot of these guys just through Facebook and, through social media. But I feel as though, like, if any one of my teammates, you guys included, called me and said, "Hey, I need something from you," absolutely, on a moment's notice, whatever, and I still feel that way about all of our buddies, Ryan Terry and Lloyd Bickham and John Houston and Jed Dull and all these guys. I used to, when Driscoll was still alive, he and I talked a couple times a year. Matt Purdy and all these guys, just Casey Wigman, Chris Jackson, all the, and a lot of those guys are guys from my class, but I mean, all up and down the classes. I still talk with Mike Wells, other guys as well. And I just, I still feel a real bond to all of you guys. And it's a time in my life, I mean, honestly and sincerely, that was the best 4.5 years of my life. Now, I mean, that doesn't mean that the rest of my life hasn't been great. I mean, I played 6 years in the NFL. I've, got a beautiful family and a good life. But man, those were good years, weren't they? I mean, those were, the really good years. And I hope that others have the same experience. I know everybody doesn't have the best experience all the time, but college to me was, people ask me all the time, like, what did you like better? Do you like college or do you like pros? And they said, it's not even close. It's absolutely college, and I'm like, oh, really? Why? Like, for me, it's all encompassing. It's you guys are my teammates, my roommates, my classmates. We go back to each other's houses. We meet each other's families. We go back to your family's houses and we do things together. We go on vacation together. We, whatever, through our college years, right? As you guys both know, the NFL is not like that as much. It's guys go home to their families. They, some guys, younger guys that are maybe not, maybe practice squad guys do probably share housing sometimes and whatnot, but for the most part, it's it's a job, right? Yes, you still hang out with each other once in a while, but it's different. And I really loved my time at Iowa, and it was a great experience for me. And I think also, I get to meet my wife there as well, which is a nice thing to be able for us to be able to go back once in a while when we can, and we get to share the experiences there. I don't know if you guys feel the same, but that's the way I feel.
Yeah, we definitely, I think we both, like everyone we had on so far is kind of just like, thinks it was a special time, great group of people, and like really kind of a life-changing experience to some degree, at least for me. I think it was,
Yeah.
I hope that doesn't change with all
Ron?
this money and stuff, where it turns into more like a pro setting of, it gets very like segmented, because I think that was what was like, we all got the same measly monthly check, and we're all in the same boat there. And so there wasn't any of this dynamics of who's getting paid more and things like that.
Hold on a second.
School.
You got a check?
Did you get that $300 check for off-campus living?
it was like what, $5,000? It was $5,000 a month, wasn't it?
Wait, Nick, we gotta talk.
Yeah. No, I share that sentiment, Brian. I got to imagine that this money This NIL stuff has really got me shook, to be honest. I think it's a huge mistake. I've been saying this for years before the NIL started. I said, people ask me lots of questions, just like they do you guys when you're working and whatnot. They find out that you played football, they know that you played football, they ask you a lot of questions. This question has come up a bunch about the NIL stuff, and I've been saying for years before this that the NCAA or the schools, they need to pay these kids. And the reason why I think you could have really washed this whole NIL thing if you just gave them a monthly stipend. It didn't have to be a big number, a couple $100. But when you think about the amount of money that these schools are making off of these kids and their images and all of that, right? Now, everybody wants to make the argument, well, you're getting your education for free, and that is absolutely valid. However, you as an in-state kid pay $20,000 a year, and me as an out-of-state kid pays $40,000 a year, right? So there's a huge discrepancy there in what the actual cost is, right? So if they can charge you $20,000, they could easily just charge everybody $20,000, right? But they know they can charge out-of-state tuition, so they do. Trying to put your finger on what the cost of your education really costs is a little bit hard. However, I think it pales in comparison to the amount of money that the university takes in because of these teams, right? And it's not the case for every team, for every sport, or for every school, for every sport. But we know that at least for football and in the Big Ten, it's highly profitable for the school. I grew up in a lower middle class household, but my parents had enough money to put $100 into a bank account for me, to be able to take a girl on a date, to buy a pair of sneakers. You know what I mean? And if I wanted to save up and get the new Jordans, okay, so I'd save it up for a month or two. There are kids that we played with, guys that still to this day, they're, come from single parent homes or from homes where their parents don't have the ability to give them any additional money. And these are kids that are out there on Saturdays scoring touchdowns and making sacks and doing all the things that they're supposed to do on the field. But they can't take a girl out for a pizza, they can't go, bowling with the buddies, you know what I mean? Because they don't have the extra money. Yes, they can eat on campus at any place they want for themselves. But, they can't, it's, when you think about it in those terms, I think it makes it a little bit more understand, I think people, understand it a little bit better with that perspective. But I think this NIL stuff is going to ruin this game, to be honest. And I think in combination with the portal, which I know they're continuing to tweak, I feel like it's a disaster waiting to happen. It sounds like they're about to make all these kids employees of the state, which is crazy. It is what it is right now, and I don't know that there's I don't know that you can put the toothpaste back in the tube.
I think you're right. It's going to be really hard. They could have fixed it earlier and just said, here's extra money to cover expenses and a little spending money just to have that little cushion, and then make that equal and do some kind of profit sharing or something with the programs and made it a lot simpler. And you sign off your rights, unless you're Caitlin Clark and you want, a Nike deal, then you can have that, but it's going through, you're not an employee, you're not representing Iowa, you're representing your individual self. But 99.9% of the athletes aren't going to have that option. Here's your standard package of you give your rights over, we'll put your name in a video game and we'll brand you and here's an extra couple, $500, $1,000 a month. And that could have, I think, solved a lot of issues, but they kept kicking it down the can down the curb, and here we are. So I think they're trying to go back to something where the school is paying for them, but yeah, we'll see how that can remedy it.
When I was coming in, I mean, we were still on the heels of trying to get all that dirty money out of the game, right? I mean, there was still, and that still had been happening even after we, you guys and I left. Is these recruiting issues and people getting paid and all this stuff. We've all heard some of the things. It feels like they just eliminated all the barriers for that stuff now, and I mean, we've seen a few of these high profile kids that have been talking about going to Iowa recently, in the last couple of years. The NIL stuff was a huge piece to it, huge piece, and when the money that you're going to get is, we all heard about these college out in the Southwest that just bought a whole damn recruiting class. They happen to be number 2 in the country right now. Like, it worked, I guess. It's kind of crazy that that's allowed, and it's based on how much money your fans and supporters and boosters are willing to give. I mean, it's really kind of crazy. But it is also interesting. I think that there are some kids that are going to make more money in college than they will in the pros. I think this former QB from Georgia is a good example of that. I mean, can't remember his name now, but I mean, he won 2 or 3 national championships at Georgia. He was making several million a year in NIL money, and he's never going to play in the NFL. He's a backup in the NFL, but I don't know that he's ever seen the field except in maybe preseason games. He was a winner, and I'm not saying he's not a good quarterback. I'm just, he's small, not necessarily. I don't think he's better than the other 32 starters, the other 31 starters. He's probably, I mean, even as a backup quarterback, he's probably still making decent money, but I guarantee you he made more at Georgia than he would, So it is interesting. And I don't begrudge these players this opportunity. I just don't think it's good for the game. When you got one guy making $1 million and you got another guy that's not making anything, there's a lot of resentment that can happen, and there's a lot of other things that can come from that aren't good. And I think it is also contrary to the experience that we had, which we just talked about. What a great experience it was, and I would wish that experience for everyone. The experience we had, I would wish for everyone, honestly. And I don't know that that's necessarily happening with these other teams. With this other stuff, with the NIL stuff, the transfer portal. It's crazy. It's like the wild, wild west out there. It's nuts. Anything goes.
I think the transfer portal is, I like the idea of like you get maybe one free transfer, not have to sit out. Like, because you could see scenarios where coaches are like, if you gone to Notre Dame and you're like, wait, they did not sell this. They did not say what they were telling me in the recruiting thing. This is not what I expected. They changed something, or the coach leaves, and this is a different coach. Butt heads with, like, I could see, like, all right, there's one mistake. You're an 18-year-old kid trying to make a very important decision, and things change, and life changes, and someone in your family gets sick, and you want to be closer to home. Like, but then to say every year I'm a free agent looking for the next best offer, that just like that. Now you have to sit out your 1 year or something like that. I think there's things like that we could do to make it a little easier for the player, but not too easy to just jump ship every year.
It ratchets up the, Scott, you had the ability to play in the next level. It just ratchets that up at a different age for kids too, right? It's like you have to now become kind of manager of your own brand, your own finances. You've got, family probably that you have to be worried about taking care of, or all those things that just like is kind of been hard for the 20, I guess you were probably what, 23 when you went into the NFL, right? Or somewhere around there, 20.
Yeah, 22. Yeah.
Yeah, 22, 23-year-old. Now it's like you're putting that back on an 18-year-old, and it's kind of, people aren't able to really handle that at 22 unless they have the right kind of support system around that. Now you're just saying, okay, when you're younger, more mature, it's like, I don't know what I would have done with, if I had $2 million when I was 18 years old. I was like, you just are just not prepared to handle it, right? I didn't come from that. I didn't come from that type of situation where I'd be like, oh, here's kind of a windfall. What now, right? It's like,
Right.
And the pressure of it, and the pressure of like, you already have huge media hype around you. You already have all these other things. Now people are like, all right, we're writing real checks for you. You're getting a payment for this. If you don't perform, then what, right? It's like, it's another kind of ratchet up on that, like already kind of really tight situation where people are like, here's a pressure cooker, and let's just turn up the heat a little more.
It's true. Yeah, it's a lot for a kid to deal with. I mean, and also not just the money itself, but all the pressure, like you said, that comes with that money, and the pressure to perform, and the possibility of losing your NIL deal or whatever if you don't perform. And you can see how a cascade of events happens, and I mean, honestly, giving money and getting money back in the day before NIL, it was usually came with expectations and potential pitfalls, right? If you don't get done, you don't win, you don't whatever, and now they're at your door, ready to hurt you, or maybe they're going to extort you in some way. Well, I'm going to make my money back, and you're going to throw that interception, or you're going to fumble that ball, or whatever. And it just brings all these other things, like I said, that this dirty stuff that had been trying to get out of the game for forever, and they just open the floodgates again.
What stories do you think back on fondly, or funny stories, the time at Iowa that you reflect on? We heard one from Derek. We'll see if that comes up again. But what are some of the things that you think back on, remember most?
There are probably some stories that we can't really talk about, huh? For all of our sakes. But I think it was the times when we were all together in groups, in big groups, we just always had so much fun together. It was a time we, obviously you guys know Ross Verba. We took Ross Verba's dad's old Winnebago one spring break, and there was 8 or 9 of us in this old ass rickety Winnebago from like 1978, and we drove to South Padre, Texas, from Iowa City. You guys probably have heard some of this stuff, but all the stuff from that trip was just, it was ridiculous. It was like it's like stuff that you make a movie about, and it was amazing. And it's, those are things that we, I think we talk about just about every time we talk. Some of the, and all the stupid shit we did when we were young as well. I mean, we went into it with innocent intentions. You know what I mean? It's not that nobody was trying to do anything bad. We just wanted to go have a good time. And I think about, those are the things, I think about that stuff. We had a good group. Derek and I have, stayed really close friends. I actually just saw him the last time I was in Arizona, which was, I think, it was around late fall last year. We got together, and Heather, his wife, they've been together forever as well. Todd Romano. We have a bunch of crazy stories. You know, I don't know if you guys remember or ever witnessed this, but you know, Todd and Bobby Diaco were roommates in the dorms. This is one of the funnier stories that happened when we were there. Well, for whatever reason, you know, Bobby, he's a unique guy. And he was one of my closest friends and still is. He decided he was going to get a lizard. You guys remember this lizard?
I think that's the
Maybe,
story that Derek told.
is that the one? He had this monitor lizard, and we used to have it was really kind of crazy because, you know, you remember, obviously Slater was our dorm. You know, we all had to stay there for the first 2 years, I think it was, and we had the first two floors of Slater Hall. And, you know, you think about this is our freshman year, so that's like, you know, it's Lloyd Bickham and John Houston and Matt Purdy and Chris Jackson and Casey Wigman. You know, I don't know if you guys remember Tony Young. He was a quarterback with us for a little while.
Love.
You know, Todd, Bobby. Yeah. Don't get me started there. But anyway, he would. So if you're familiar with the monitor lizard, it's not like a little skinny lizard. I mean, this thing's got some beef to it. You know, it's you wouldn't want to be bitten by it or hit by its tail. It was a substantial lizard, and he used to feed it live mice, and it was like you were watching the latest Tyson fight. Like everybody was in the room. You know, think about 8, 10, 12, 15 guys packed into there. Harold Jasper and, you know, all the different guys, you know, Bo Porter. It was crazy. Ryan Terry. I mean, all of us were just in there, and we would watch them, you know, this lizard just go after these mice, and it was, you know, it was somewhat barbaric, but it was fun for a bunch of, you know, 19-year-olds. You know, lizards are cold-blooded animals. You guys have obviously heard the story from Derek, but long story short, Bobby ended up moving his cage and whatnot into the back of I had a old Ford Bronco, into my Bronco. It was wintertime, and we were about to go away to, you know, for winter break. It was just because, you know, it was just getting to winter. It was like December. And of course we went out and we forgot that it was in the back of my truck. And we ended up, some of the details are a little bit fuzzy, but effectively, when we finally realized that the monitor had been left out in the cold, like overnight, or whatever it was exactly, I don't even remember all the details. We thought it was dead. I mean, it was literally just frozen solid. Ended up bringing it back into the dorm and whatnot, and ultimately, you guys, I'm sure Derek told the story a little bit better, but it ended up surviving. But we think it had some sort of brain damage after that. We weren't exactly sure. It was never quite right, but it was the most ridiculous scenario. We still laugh about it to this day. It was some of the funniest moments that I remember. I mean, just laughing in tears. You know, it was hilarious.
We didn't hear the feeding story, or we weren't sure whose lizard it was. Derek thought it was yours, but it sounds like it was Bobby's.
And he said it was an
Bobby,
iguana
yeah.
too, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
No, it was a monitor. Yeah. So,
Yeah, monitor.
yeah, so we're all a little fuzzy on the details, but yeah.
We'll ask Diaco, and then we'll get the 3 stories, and we'll figure out what exactly.
Oh yes. Oh, he'll know all the details.
Okay.
He'll know all the details. He always does.
That's great. Do you have any good Coach Fry stories you like?
Coach Fry, you know, actually, I don't know if you guys are on any of these sort of these Iowa Hawkeye Facebook pages, but I'm on a couple of them, and some guy on there who's, not, he's a decent guy, but he wasn't a player, he just was a fan. He made the statement that Kirk Ferentz was better than Hayden Fry, and he was going off their records. And I just said to him, I said, honestly, it's not even a contest. I said, there's no question that Coach Fry is better. It's not necessarily based on what their record is or was. That it's more about the halo effect of, just the kind of guy he is, but also, I mean, you could make an argument that he and Nick Saban are in almost the exact same scenario. I mean, they're both responsible for probably more head coaches and assistant coaches in both, maybe not as much in the NFL. I'd say, like your Mike Holmgren kind of people are probably similar to Hayden Fry on the pro side, but on the collegiate side, I'm not sure that there's anybody, maybe Nick Saban, but Hayden Fry was responsible for more head coaches and assistant coaches in college than anyone else I can imagine, and certainly more so than Kirk. And Kirk has done a great job at Iowa, but I don't think that you can. And also there are other things about Hayden Fry that Kirk can't even touch. The things that Hayden Fry has done for the game of football, as a whole, and some of that's opportunistic because he was, Hayden was around back, you guys probably know more of these details than I do, but him being the first coach to scholarship a black athlete, pretty amazing, right? I don't know how you beat that, truthfully. My parents and I talked about him a lot, and even somewhat recently. He had this unbelievable memory. You guys know this, but he came to my house one time in 1990, maybe. He probably spent all of an hour or an hour and a half in the house. And after I came to the school and had been there for 4.5 years, he would still come up to me and ask me how my Uncle Al was. He remembered the name of my dog. I mean, he was amazing, just amazing. And look, I'm not naive to the fact that I'm sure that he took notes and whatnot. But to remember those things, years and years later, like, look, he's already got me. He doesn't need to, I'm already there and bought in. He doesn't need to recruit me anymore. And there he is asking me, how my 75-year-old Uncle Al is doing. You know what I mean? And it was always amazing to me. He was a genuine guy. He really cared. And it showed, and it showed in everything that he did. And I think we all looked at him. Well, I can't speak for you guys, but I mean, I think I felt like most of us looked at him as a real father figure, and he was the kind of person that you didn't want to, you didn't want to let him down, and it was just a big part of how special our time was there. It was great years, honestly.
I'll add, for Coach Fry, like, he basically built the map of how you rebuild a program. And then you had an assistant coach go off and rebuild Wisconsin into the power it is today. And they were terrible. They were awful. And then you had another assistant go and rebuild Kansas State, which I think might be the most amazing transformation of a program we saw with Bill Snyder and Alvarez. Like, how to rebuild a program from scratch that has been decades of losing. I mean, he could have taken, one of his assistants could have taken that recipe and done it at Columbia. Like, he had the recipe and how you pull that off, and they replicated that, and they took terrible programs they took over and turned them into powerhouses. I mean, that is the legacy, I think, of Coach Fry, is what he provided to the
Stoops brothers.
The Stoops, right? They go into these schools that they're not football
Same.
schools. Kentucky's not a football school. It's amazing. So yeah,
Yeah.
he's built a recipe to follow. Crazy.
I mean, it's not just it's Mike Stoops. I think he did it at Arizona State. You have Bobby Stoops, obviously did it at Oklahoma, and that now onto the what is he? He's doing it at or he was at one of these smaller pro XFL or something like that, right? I mean, it is amazing, and it's not just that. There's a bunch of other, I mean, he made Kirk Ferentz know who he is, right? I mean, that part of the argument alone, I think Hayden wins that discussion. But no, it's amazing. He was an amazing man, and yeah, I think people. The funny part is when people ask me who my coach was, and I say Hayden Fry, you know what the first thing they say is, right?
About the TV show?
Pink bathrooms,
No.
pink locker rooms. He's like, is that real? And people ask me all the time. When they ask me who I played for in college, I tell them, they're like, that's the pink bathrooms and locker rooms, right? Is that real? Yeah, it's real. Yeah.
Did you ever see the
it's
locker
funny,
room?
that's what they remember.
Did you go in there?
Yeah.
While you're playing?
I did.
Or when was the first time?
Yeah. Yeah, I went in there once when we were playing.
Okay.
It was in the off season.
Yeah.
I think it was when we were running damn freaking stairs. I was probably trying to get away, trying to hide. I don't know. I don't remember exactly the details, but I remember everything was red, that light red. That light pink. Even the ceiling tiles. I mean, it's nuts. Yeah. I guess you never went in to look at it.
It was later after playing days. I was like some kind of tour of the facility, like the new facility, new upgrades or something. They're like, oh, here's the old pink locker rooms. And I'd seen pictures, but I was like, I was telling Nick, I think in our previous interview, like they should have done that for players, like show them the locker room because we're never in there. Yeah. We've never gone in there, but heard about it. So yeah, it was kind of funny. It was years later that I finally got to see it in real life. That's
funny. Yeah.
You hear the stories of the opposing teams coming in and like wallpapering everything and like trying to like, they're spending their energy trying to like combat this thing, right?
Yeah. So it's working. This just lets you know it's working.
Yeah, right. It's just like living in their head, and they're like more concerned about what color the bathroom is than playing the actual game.
Right. Yeah, it's a huge distraction. Yeah, it's great. It's brilliant, really, when you think about it. He was a psychology major, right? So that's he knew how to get into your head, either in a good way or a bad way, right? I still talk about Hayden Fry time, I still talk about winter workouts. Like it takes a guy to be late one time, and nobody else is late after that. Nobody else. You're going to get your ass kicked by all your teammates, But there are all kinds of things, and it is kind of funny because these little memories and whatnot, they pop up every once in a while randomly, and you're like, something triggers that, and it's but it's fun when you think back, you got those memories to look back on and enjoy.
Sure. One of the other things was the stand-up tight end. Brian and I were talking about that before you came on. Was that a huge adjustment for you? And I guess going to the NFL, you'd had to go back to a 3-point, right? So like, tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, so in high school, I played like split end tight end. So there were times where I was, like almost like a slot receiver. Sorry, I got a little fly buzzing around here. I played sort of like a slot receiver to a certain extent. But I would also be, down in a 3-point stance in the normal tight end position. But it wasn't. I didn't feel like it was a big adjustment for me. Maybe because I was used to being in a 2-point, standing 2-point stance at times. And we drilled it just ad nauseum. I don't know if you remember. Nick, I know you remember, but because you were tight end as well. But we drilled getting our pad level down, and we had that. Remember, we had that that rolled metal. I don't know what you want to call it, but it was basically to help us figure out how to get down, because you knock your helmet into the damn bar if you didn't get down low enough. We did all the time. I mean, we drilled it all the time from that standing position, and I really enjoyed it in college. I felt like nobody knew how to defend it well. They didn't know, and they didn't know whether we were going to, block or go out for a pass. They also, very rarely do they ever go against that type of a stance. So they weren't quite really, well versed in how to defend it. The other piece that I really enjoyed was being able to see the field, being able to see what coverages were, maybe where a blitz or some sort of a blitz package was coming from, and we could communicate that to the quarterback and the line and our hot reads and all that stuff. So I felt like it was great. I did not have any issue going back to a 3-point stance when I got to the NFL. I do think that it may have. I was still a 3rd round pick for the Colts, but I think that it could have hurt me a little bit that I had gone all 4 years, in a stand-up position. I think some tight end coaches might have thought that I was going to struggle to go back into a 3-point stance, which I didn't. And I played a lot of short yardage and goal line stuff in the NFL. I was a good blocker in the NFL. It didn't hurt me, while playing, but I think it could have hurt me a little bit. Just in what team was going to take me or not, and when.
That might lead us right into your NFL career if you want to talk about that and how that kind of broke down.
Yeah, so like I said, a 3rd round pick was a crazy. I do have a funny story about the actual draft. So the draft happens in April, and by then I was done with school. So I was sort of, you're kind of in limbo, like you still move, you're still going to play football. It's just you're not playing it after school, but you're not sure like what to do. Do I stay at school and where do I work out? How does the team, they let me hang around and work out in the facility, or got to go find a gym now? And, so I think most guys end up going home or something to that effect, right? You got the NFL combine in there and then the draft, and you just got to figure out. Now, I think teams and schools have got some of that stuff a little bit better figured out these days than they did back then. Because if I was a college coach, I'd want these great players to stick around as long as they want to stick around, right? Because they're going to be a great influence on your and a great example to the rest of your team. Like, hey, look at these guys. They're in the same position you're in right now. They were in the same position you're in, and if you do the things like they do, then you're gonna do okay. And I don't know that we had a lot of that back then. But anyway, I ended up going home back to New Jersey, and and obviously it's a thing you want to share with your family anyway. But there's a lot of, especially in my later years in college, I didn't go back home very often. I really came to a point where, Iowa City was my home for. I'd go back for a couple weeks, but I would always come back to Iowa City, in the summers and whatnot. And so going back home was a big deal. All my friends and my family and other, people that that really supported me through high school and also through college. They want to see me, and it was nice to kind of have that homecoming. So there was a lot of everybody knew the NFL draft is coming, and we had you kind of get word from the NFL play people, and everybody sees the Chris Berman and Mel Kiper, et cetera, all these pundits that think they know where and when people are getting drafted. So I was projected anywhere from first to fourth round. So I felt pretty confident that I was going, that I was going to be going in the draft. Obviously you see these guys that expect to get drafted and then never do, and it's a hard thing for them. But anyway, there had been several little events and get-togethers and whatnot, like in the days following up to that, and I'd been just doing lots of things. Go to my high school, talk to them, a couple of different little parties and get-togethers and all that stuff. So you get kind of run down, and so we knew what time the draft came on, and so my mom, trying to look out for me to get some sleep, she turned the ringer off on the phone, so that I could get sleep. And then when I got up, we you got ready. You kind of got to figure out what you're gonna do, and Dad's pacing over in the kitchen, and Mom just doing whatever, and I'm sitting there watching the draft. We're all sitting there watching the draft, and all of a sudden my name pops up that I've been drafted, and we're like looking at each other like, first of all we're like, oh my God, and then we're like, what do you mean? I hadn't even got a phone call, and my mom goes, oh my God, I forgot to turn the ringer back on.
That's hilarious.
We turned the ringer on, and the phone rings immediately, and it is Tom Batta, who was the tight end coach with the Indianapolis Colts. And then he quickly gives the phone to Lindy Infante, the head coach for the Colts. Hey, we've been trying to get in touch with you. If you saw, but we just drafted you. Welcome to the team. Blah 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 blah. And to this day, I don't think my mom has forgiven herself for that. I mean, it's just so. It didn't make a difference one way or the other, but who knows? I think that was the other piece. She's continually asked herself, maybe you might have been drafted earlier if, maybe somebody called and they couldn't get in touch with you, and they just decided to pass on you because I'm like, Mom, stop. It doesn't matter. So that was sort of the start of my NFL career right there, and it's kind of funny because I could say that's almost indicative of my career, really. I had a very good career at Iowa, as you guys know. I mean, I caught a fair share of passes and did pretty well. I didn't have quite as much opportunity when I was in the NFL, and first of all, I was a third-round draft pick to the Indianapolis Colts in '96. In '95, they drafted Ken Dilger with the second-round pick, and Ken was a Pro Bowl alternate his rookie year. So I was behind him, and he was a very good tight end and a good guy, a University of Illinois guy. We became very good friends, still friends to this day. He and his wife Heidi and my wife Susan are good friends as well. And on the practice squad was Marcus Pollard. I don't know if you remember the name, but Marcus Pollard was a 3 or 4 time Pro Bowler as well in his career. Now he was on the practice squad at the time, but he's a very talented guy. He was super athletic. He actually played football and basketball in college. And he was just young and somewhat raw. He came in the same year that Ken did, which was 95. So I got there in 96, and I've got a Pro Bowl current year Pro Bowl alternate starting, and a, soon to be multi-time Pro Bowler on the practice squad, who then got elevated to the regular squad. So it was slim pickings for me as far as getting touches and whatnot. So I was there for 2.5 years, and we had a head coach change. Lindy Infante got let go, and Jim Mora Sr. came in to be the coach. I was not a real fan of Jim Mora Sr. He was extremely condescending to everyone. Now, this is later in his career. This is after his career with the Saints. He was not a happy human being. Let's just put it that way. And it was difficult to play for him, because he just belittled everyone for every mistake. I mean, even his coaches, the head trainers, like everybody. So they actually traded me in 1998, just before the first game. So went through training camp, the 98 training camp with the Colts, and then got traded. This is also an interesting story. The timing was you guys all know that the last game is you have to have your roster set by Sunday, by 12 midnight Sunday, before the first week of the regular season starts. I got a call. We had just played as you guys know, the preseason games are played mostly, back then at least, they were played on Saturdays. And it was Sunday, and I was, we had just bought a house. Susan and I just bought a house in Indy, and I get a call from Clyde Powers, who was the pro player personnel guy. And he says, "Hey, Scott, Clyde, great guy, really good dude. Hey, can you come into the facility? We need to talk with you." And I'm like, I know what's going on, right? I've never been cut before, because I'd only been with the Colts, but I was like, what's going on? I had a great camp. It was probably one of the better camps that was my third camp, and I had a great camp. I felt really good about it. I said, "Are you kidding me?" I'm like, "Clyde, what's going on? Am I getting cut?" He's like, "I can't really say, but yeah, you might have been traded." So he's like, "Just bring your
So
clothes
pretty
up,"
much traded. Yeah, right.
Yeah. You might have been. Yeah, I think he just was. He was a good dude, and I think he wanted me to to ease my mind a little bit for the 15-minute drive I had into the facility. But anyway, so I got traded, but I drove into the facility. We go through the process. Give them the playbook, and they hand me an airline ticket. Now this is like, by this time it's, I don't know, maybe 12, 1 o'clock, in the afternoon. Hands me an airplane ticket, and it's for 6 o'clock that night to go to New Orleans. I got traded to New Orleans, and like I said, we had just bought our house. I get home, my wife is obviously, so we weren't married at the time, we were engaged, but she's scared, what's going on, blah blah blah. She's in the dark with it all, right? This is pre-cell phone, so you couldn't call her on the way home to to tell her what happened. So I ended up packing a bag. I just throw some clothes in a bag, and off I go. It's the last time I saw that house.
Oh, really?
the season started Monday. That was Sunday. By the time I got into my hotel and whatnot, it was like 10 o'clock at night. And I had to be in the facility at like 7:30 in the morning to get everything, everything. This was also the year that, so the head coach at New Orleans was Mike Ditka. This was the year that Ricky Williams was the first round pick, where Mike Ditka traded his entire draft class for Ricky Williams. So you guys remember that whole shit show with Ricky and all that stuff. This is what I went into. So I got traded to New Orleans, never saw my house again. It's a great house. It was a nice first house, but my wife and actually our defensive line coach in Indy, his wife was a realtor. She helped my wife out to sell the house, and several weeks later, I've kind of been looking for a place, and we ended up buying a townhouse in New Orleans. And my wife, the good thing about being traded is that the NFL pays for everything. They pay for all your move, everything, and it's not just it's white glove service. It's they walk into your bedroom, they see a dresser, they take every single item out, wrap it individually, put it into a box, and then when they bring it to you, they take it all out, put it all right back where it was. So it's a nice situation. It's you don't. I would have preferred to have stayed in Indy, but it was what it was. So I get to New Orleans, and it's a mess with all the Ricky Williams stuff and all that. But playing wise, it's another situation. I'm behind a guy that they just drafted in the first round. His name is Cam Cleveland, also a Pro Bowler, and a very good football player, and a very good guy. We're still friends to this day. So I was behind him. I started a few games, a couple times, when he was hurt, and I played a lot in the two tight end, 3 tight end situations. But I wasn't going to get the opportunity to beat the guy there either. I played there for 2.5 years, and then tore my knee up. Actually, it was 2 years, and tore my knee up, and then they let me go effectively after my rehab was done. They were a little bit shady in how they did it. I was still rehabbing my knee. This was the 2000 season. They had some tight ends go down, and I was not even a year post ACL. And they tried to, this is before, I don't know what they're doing these days, where they're getting these guys back so much faster than they used to. But it used to be at least a 1.5 year injury before you could really get back to football related stuff. I was under a year, and they were trying to get me to play in the preseason game. I hadn't even been pushing on anybody. I hadn't been to camp yet. I was still getting my strength up. I was doing some straight running, but I had not even run any routes where I was changing direction. And they tried to get me to play in a preseason game, which was extremely shady. And I refused, and they cut me the next week. So I spent the rest of my time I spent the rest of my rehab in New Orleans. Once my rehab was done, my wife and I decided to move to a better area, a better place than New Orleans was fun when we were, young and pre-kids, and I would never want to bring up kids there, just for multiple reasons. But part of it is it's also somewhat like a tropical rainforest there. You literally go from your air-conditioned house to your air-conditioned car, and you hope that you don't have a long walk, because you're going to be sweaty, likely, by the time you get to or from your car or house. And my wife grew up in Chicago, and we met in Iowa. And I grew up in New Jersey, in New York, New Jersey, and so that we enjoyed our time in New Orleans, but it wasn't a place we wanted to bring up family and bring up kids, and wanted to get closer to family that was, in the more northern half of the U.S. So we ended up looking around and chose Charlotte. Between that time of us moving to Charlotte and a call from the Jets, I actually tried out with the Jets, and they signed me. And so I ended up going to the Jets, and again, I was behind Anthony Becht, who was the first round pick for the Jets as well. So there were several, and you guys know how this works with the game. I mean, the guys that have the money, the guys that the team has money and are going to get the opportunities. That doesn't mean that you can't win an opportunity. You can't win over it, but you have to be significantly better than the other guy in order to be the guy that has money. They have money invested in. And so I was there for. I actually went through camp there. Knee was better, the whole bit, and felt really good. They had several issues with a bunch of starters that were injured, but not so injured that they needed to put them on IR. They knew they were going to be back within the next, 2 to 4 weeks, and so they had no choice but to cut me because they needed to keep these roster spots open for these couple of these starters that were, different positions from mine, but starters. And they actually, it's very rare does this happen, but they actually went through the season with only 2 tight ends, and their second tight end was actually their long snapper. So they took they rolled the dice and they won. And by then, for me, so that was my last year. That was 2001. I actually, since the anniversary of September 11th just happened, I recalled this scenario because it was right about this time of the year when it happened. So the Jets cut me. Like I said, I had a good camp. This was under Herm Edwards, really good guy, really respect Herm. And he was a straightforward guy, and he was a good dude. I still wanted to play, and like I said, I had a really good camp. I felt very good about. I mean, I was strong. I was blowing guys off the ball. I mean, I played. I played a lot in the preseason and did well. But the numbers were the numbers. And I was also, by then I was a 5th-year guy, so I was more expensive than a rookie, as well. So if they really needed somebody, they could easily pick up a rookie, or a first-year guy that was significantly less money. But I went on a tryout with the Bears, and I got a call from my wife the morning of the 11th. I was in my hotel room about to leave to go to the tryout with the Bears, and my wife said, "Hey, where are you? Something's happening." And she said, "You got to turn on the TV." I wasn't watching TV. I was getting ready to leave to go, win a job. And that's when I saw the second plane hit the towers. That was tough. I got a lot of family there, and all the phone systems were down, and it was really hard because I got a lot of friends there. I had a lot of people that worked in that area and in the towers, and it was rough. You could tell just from my reaction here. Anyway, I still ended up going through they still put me through the workout, which was really crazy.
Were you you took a flight already, or where were you at
I
exactly?
was already there. Yeah. I
You already
was already in
oh,
place.
wow.
I was in a hotel, just in the suburbs of, where their facility was. And I was in a hotel close to the facility. So they sent a car for me to go to the tryout, and I tried out anyway, even though, my head wasn't in it. And the tryout was fine. I actually ended up, tweaking my hamstring actually on the last throw of the day. And then I got stuck in Chicago because all the flights were down for almost the better part of a week. And so I ended up, just literally sitting in my hotel, just like everybody watching their TV, trying to figure out what's going on. And it was a tough time. And then by then I was like, I felt like I still had that competitive fire and I still had this skill and ability. I was kind of tired by then of just bouncing around. So I went back to Charlotte, which is where we had just bought a home. And I came to a point where I just wanted to start the next phase of my life. As you guys, I know you guys understand, that whole feeling and thing. The funny part about it is it was really hard for me to watch football for a good year or two after being done. I could watch college. I watched college, but it was really hard for me to watch pro football. There's a part of me right now that says I should have tried to continue to play because I still had the ability and skill and interest and fire. It was hard to watch guys that you're better than. It was just hard for me for a little while. Yeah, so that's sort of my story there. But I obviously got over that, and moved on. But that's the story of my pro career. It was I've got one touchdown. I have a buddy that continually tells me that don't get so full of yourself. You only have one more touchdown in the NFL than I have. Yeah, yeah, but, yeah. That's my story.
Wow, thanks for sharing that. I know that was a really intense time in the world, right? And to kind of go through that and have people that close to it, I'm sure it's a clarifying moment to be vulnerable like that with us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah. I said this the other day. Minus the tragedy, man, it would be amazing if this country could come together like we did on the 12th. I mean, September 12th. I mean, we were all for one, man, one for all, and it's amazing how far we've gone from there, to where we are now. And it's a shame that it takes a tragedy like that to elicit that response. But man, like I said, minus the tragedy, man, it would be great for us as a country to come back together in that way.
I think we all had a frozen moment in time with that, right? Everybody kind of knows where they were and where their loved ones were and all that. Like you remember that vividly. And that was what?
Yeah.
10, 12 years ago or whatever that was.
23
years. Yeah. We've also been through, the COVID stuff, and it's almost the opposite with COVID for me. It's like, it's a blur, that whole COVID time and us, all the being home and everything. It was such a blur. Like 9/11, man, I remember everything.
Did you have family and friends that you lost? Do you mind me asking?
I did not lose any family, thankfully. I did lose a couple friends. Yeah.
Yeah, that was disappointing. I thought COVID would be another chance where we could all come together and fight a common battle, and that just went the complete opposite direction. I mean, very disheartening and a little depressing, actually. But I don't know. I hope we can get back to that at some point where, yeah, we're all kind of one country, but see.
Yeah. Nick, your family has always been great to us, and really thankful to have such good friends.
These relationships have been super meaningful for me as well. And like, yeah, my folks still talk about all you guys, and like your extended family. Yeah, it's a great experience for sure. One quick thing, what's your favorite Nick Gallery large head story? It was something fun.
Well, there are several, but once we really saw how big your helmet was, your body's big too. So it's not like you're not looking like Charlie Brown head over here, but it's pretty amazing. The other part is, I mean, maybe you can put it up to the camera, but can you show us your thumbs?
Oh God.
Yeah. Because you got some big thumbs too. You have thumbs like big toes.
Yes. Screen out of the way. There we go.
The funny part about it is that, as much as I joked with you, and I know that there was this story about me hitting you in the head with the ball. I wasn't aiming for your head, but it was hard to miss. I was also afraid of you because you're farm boy strong, and like you have those big toes for thumbs. I feel like you were like Lenny from Of Mice and Men. You were going to just squeeze the life out of me.
Yes,
you know how much I love you, though.
Very short thumb, but I've only lost once in thumb wrestling. No,
I believe it. I would never play you in the thumb war.
Genetically engineered to be a thumb wrestler. Yes, for sure. Forgot about that.
You were always a good sport, and I hope that I wasn't too mean to you. I hope I didn't haze you too much as a young guy, but I really loved getting to know you and consider you a brother.
You too, sir. Yeah, you guys were entertaining. We were good mentors and whatever else for us coming in. It was kind of, we talked a lot about that being young, and just kind of like wondered what you guys thought we saw us two having to go out in the field and be like, oh, these two jokers. Like, what? How did we get to this point where we have to rely on these two fools to take care of us?
Well, I mean, you kicked the ball literally over the bubble. So, I mean, you kind of redeemed yourself.
Love it.
I remember watching you do it.
I think I got it over once or twice. We talked about that in one of the last.
Yeah, we were trying to remember if we actually got it over almost, but yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah,
he did get over.
Yeah,
definitely out of the stadium a few times. Yeah, over the bubble once or twice.
I'm thankful to have you guys and have all these great memories to reminisce about.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, well,
good to catch up.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Be good.
Bye.
Bye.